So you're probably wondering why you're seeing me unmask the car for the second time, but I've actually just painted the whole car again. So I had some issues getting the paint runs out of the car. The smaller paint runs came out fine, but where I had the sort of the sags in the paint, where the paint was pretty much just falling off the panels, even when I got the paint flat, you could see a completely different shade in the paint where the run was. And on both of the rear arches, when I was trying to get that sag out, I ended up rubbing all the way through to the primer, and I did that on both sides. The way it was on a curve was just difficult to sort of stay flat enough to just take off what you wanted. So yeah, just ended up rubbing the whole thing down with 400 grit, masked it up, and sprayed it again. And this time it's a lot better. So there's a few little bits where the paint's gone on a little bit thin, where I was just scared to sort of pile it on like I did the last time. I've got one paint run. I was struggling with this, just trying to get the paint in there without sort of piling it up. You can see where it's gone in nicely there, but there's obviously too much and it's run out the bottom. And then here it's kind of a little bit sort of dry looking, but I think I'd much rather have it like a few little spots that look a little bit sort of dry than obviously have paint runs everywhere. Like, I'd be quite happy to just leave that as it looks now and use it. Also, I hosed down the floor, which a lot of people recommended I did, and there's so much less dirt stuck in the roof, and I kept the door shut as well while I was painting. Had it open last time, obviously, with all the wind and dust blowing around, which was good for sucking all the paint fumes out, but obviously this is given a much cleaner result. So this was the paint gun I went for. I had loads of different guns recommended to buy. Another reason why I kind of wanted to go with DeVille was this was one I got given years ago. This is probably like 15 years old or something now. And I stripped it all down when I did the primer, and it still works really well. And it all feels really good quality. It's nicely made. This one was made in England. This actually feels a lot better made than this one does, but this is obviously a budget kind of gun, and I think this one, when my buddy who bought it got it, this was kind of top of the range at the time, but just thought I'd stick with the same brand. Probably the most noticeable difference painting with this was the lack of overspray coming out of it. It just seems like much more direct. The way the paint came out and hits the panel seemed a lot more consistent. It didn't put out anywhere near as much paint as the cheap gun, so I found to get that sort of like glossy look, I had to be quite a bit closer or moving quite a lot slower with this than with that cheap gun, where I found I had to be really like moving really fast, because it was just chucking a lot more paint out, maybe just because I didn't have it adjusted correctly or whatever, but this is definitely an improvement. So when it came to actually painting it this time as well, I watched loads of videos from channels that were recommended. The Gunman was recommended to me loads of times. Tony's Refinishing is a channel that's really worth having a look at, and he's sent me some good tips on Instagram. And both of those channels, on their videos, they've got a GoPro watching them sort of painting, which is really helpful for actually just sort of studying the way that they're putting the paint on, how far they're holding the gun away, and a lot of tips on the different guns, you know, the different size tips and all that kind of stuff. One of the tips I got from Tony's refinishing was to put the first coat on really light and then kind of go heavier, and then the more coats you put on, the longer you leave it in between putting your next coat on. And that, I think that was really the key to me not getting a load of paint runs this time around. So I didn't really want to paint the car twice, but to be honest, it's just been a good learning process. And even now, if I was to go back and do it again now, I think I could get it even better again than I have. All right, so I'll do some work on this. Mainly here. This bottom piece of the wing obviously needs finishing off. I want this lip to just continue across, or kind of at a bit of an angle, just to make this so it's not just sharp edge. So this whole inner arch is all full of resin, where it's run down from here. So this is 20 mil thick. So I'm just trying to find something that will grind that out easily. Transpares sent me this out, along with a load of other stuff to get the car finished off. So I've never used this before. So you get a matting, some gloves, some resin, some hardener, so I watched a couple of videos on it. Basically, you just cut this up into strips or pieces, whatever size you need, mix up some resin, brush it on where you want it, put the strips on, repeat, repeat, repeat. Right, so these are now ready for some high build primer, which I'm just waiting for some more of that to turn up. So what I did was I started off with the fiberglass matting and the resin like you saw. So I put a few layers of that in, and then I used this stuff just to get into the areas to sort of build it to the shape a bit better I want. This makes me laugh. They actually recommend this for repairing holes in rust, which the thing is like the amount of time it takes to sort of do this stuff, grind it all back, get it all looking how it's supposed to. You could, if you had a little rust hole, you could just weld a bit of steel in there probably quicker than this takes to dry. So yeah, I did the matting, that stuff, and then just a skim of filler, and that's nice, smooth, how I want it. I also did this little corner up here because it was cut out for the channel, the gutter channel to pass down through, but I cut the channel off on the car because it was just rusty, and it was easier to do that and try and remake it, so I just had to make that corner to close that hole up. And then I also put some extra just down in these back edges because I trimmed, this lip was about an extra inch taller, but just because of all the modifications I've done to the car and it being obviously attached to an MX-5, I had to cut this lip off, so I just put some more in here just to add a bit of strength. On this one, it started to crack here, just where obviously there's, you know, a bit of flexing from not having the sort of extra strength there, and then put some more in here just because it was really thin on that corner. So yeah, this is what it all looks like from the inside, and I'm gonna, all the inside of the fiberglass panels are being stone chipped, so this will all be just done in black stone chip. So while I'm waiting on primer, I decided to paint the inside of the doors. This is all the same colour as the interior, obviously. And now I'm just gonna paint a couple of panels. Alright, I'm ready to mix up some paint. The cups have all the mixing ratios. This is 2:1, and then the thinners 10, and it seemed a little bit too thick, so I just added a little bit more, probably about 15. It just seems to come out the gun a little bit better. Had a few people asking for the paint code. There it is.